The night had settled over the city, and the parking lot of the supermarket was nearly empty. Only a few cars remained, scattered around the dimly lit asphalt, their silhouettes blending into the shadows. The occasional hum of engines and faint rustling of plastic bags were the only sounds breaking the stillness. Overhead, the flickering glow of the streetlights cast long, wavering reflections on the wet pavement, remnants of an earlier drizzle. Marcus Reed leaned back in the driver's seat of his SUV, letting out a tired sigh. It had been another long day filled with meetings, community events, and endless obligations. He wasn't usually the type to stop at a grocery store this late, but he'd run out of bottled water and figured he might as well grab a quick snack before heading home. As he stepped out of the car, the chill in the air made him pull his jacket tighter around his broad frame. He took a few steps toward the entrance when he noticed movement near the far end of the lot. A woman was pushing a long line of shopping carts, straining against their weight as they rattled and squeaked over the uneven pavement. She was small, barely more than a silhouette under the dim lights, but the effort in her movements was unmistakable. Marcus slowed his pace, his eyes narrowing as he took in the scene. Behind her, parked close to the edge of the lot, was an old sedan with fogged-up windows. A faint light glowed from inside, and as Marcus focused, he saw the outline of something, or someone, inside. The woman's posture was tense, her shoulders hunched forward as if bracing against both the cold and the burden she carried. Her clothes were worn and mismatched, a heavy jacket that looked 2 sizes too big and jeans frayed at the cuffs. She pushed the carts into their designated area, wiped her hands on her jacket, and then hurried back toward the car, glancing nervously over her shoulder. Marcus' instincts kicked in. Something about the scene didn't sit right with him. He hesitated for a moment, then changed direction, heading toward the woman instead of the store. "Excuse me," he called out, keeping his voice low and calm. The woman froze mid-step and turned to face him. Her eyes were wide, reflecting the flickering light overhead. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes and lips chapped from the cold. "Sorry, I didn't mean to startle you," Marcus said, stopping a few feet away to avoid making her feel cornered. Are you okay?" Her shoulders stiffened. "I'm fine," she said quickly, too quickly. Her voice wavered, betraying her. Marcus glanced at the car behind her. Through the foggy window, he could just make out the shape of a baby carrier. His stomach tightened. "Is that your car?" he asked, gesturing toward the sedan. "Yes." Her answer was clipped, defensive. She shifted slightly as if trying to block his view of the car. Marcus hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "I don't mean to pry. Look, I've seen a lot of things in my life, and this doesn't look right. Do you need help?" The woman's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away quickly and shook her head. "I'm fine," she repeated, but her voice cracked. Marcus took a step closer. "Are you sure? Because it looks like you've got a baby in there, and it's pretty cold out tonight." That was when she broke. Her shoulders slumped, and the tension in her body seemed to collapse all at once. "I'm not fine," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus nodded, giving her space to speak. "My name's Sarah," she said, swiping at the tears that had begun to fall. "And that's my son, Noah. He's 3 months old." Marcus glanced back at the car again, his heart sinking as he noticed the bundle of blankets in the carrier. "We've been living in my car for the past 2 weeks," Sarah continued, her voice trembling. "I lost my job when I went on maternity leave, and his father left before he was even born. I don't have family nearby, and I couldn't keep up with rent. The shelters are full." And, she trailed off, choking back a sob. Marcus felt his chest tighten. He'd heard stories like this before, too many, in fact, but seeing it firsthand was different. He could see the desperation in Sarah's eyes, the way her hands trembled as she clutched her jacket around herself. "What about tonight?" Marcus asked. "Where were you planning to sleep?" "In the car," she said, looking away as if ashamed. "I keep it running until it gets too cold, then turn it off to save gas. I can't afford a motel, and even if I could, I'd be out of money by the end of the week." Marcus exhaled slowly, trying to control the anger he felt, not at Sarah, but at the world that had let her end up here. "Sarah," he said gently, "you don't have to do this alone. Let me help." She shook her head. "I don't need charity." "It's not charity," Marcus said firmly. "It's help. And right now, you need it." Sarah hesitated, glancing back at the car where her baby slept. Her defenses were crumbling, but the fear of trusting a stranger still lingered. "Just one night," Marcus added. "Let me get you and Noah someplace warm. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow." Tears spilled down Sarah's cheeks as she nodded. "Okay." Marcus felt a wave of relief. He pulled out his phone and started making calls. First to a motel he knew, then to a friend who could deliver supplies. As he worked, Sarah stood beside the car, rocking Noah's carrier gently and whispering to him. By the time Marcus hung up, he had a plan, but he also knew this was only the beginning. Sarah needed more than just one night of safety. She needed a way out of the cycle she was trapped in, and Marcus was determined to give her that chance. The motel room smelled faintly of stale carpet and disinfectant, but to Sarah, it felt like a sanctuary. The heater hummed softly, filling the space with a comfort and warmth she hadn't felt in weeks. She sat on the edge of the bed, gently rocking Noah in her arms as he cooed and nestled against her chest. For the first time in what felt like forever, he wasn't bundled in layers of mismatched blankets, and she didn't have to worry about whether the car would keep running through the night. Marcus Reed leaned against a small desk near the window, his broad frame making the cramped room feel even smaller. He watched Sarah carefully, not wanting to overwhelm her, but also determined to keep his promise. The quiet hum of the heater filled the silence until Sarah finally looked up, her tired eyes meeting his. "Thank you," she said softly. "I don't even know what to say." Marcus shook his head. "You don't have to say anything. Just take a breath. You're safe now." Sarah smiled weakly, but it didn't last. Her gaze drifted down to Noah, and the smile faded, replaced by something heavier: fear, guilt, maybe even shame. Marcus noticed immediately. "What's wrong?" She hesitated, her fingers brushing over the soft fabric of Noah's onesie. "I don't even know where to start," she admitted. Marcus pulled up the desk chair and sat down, leaning forward slightly to meet her at eye level. "Start wherever you need to," he said. Sarah swallowed hard, her eyes filling with tears she had been holding back for too long. "I used to have a plan," she began. "I wasn't supposed to end up like this." Her voice trembled, but she pressed on, as if saying the words out loud might finally make her believe them. "I grew up in a small town, one of those places where everyone knows each other. My parents worked hard, but we never had much. College wasn't really an option, so I started working straight out of high school. I moved to the city to try and build something better for myself." She paused, adjusting Noah in her arms as if the motion gave her courage to continue. "I was doing okay. I had a job as a cashier at a grocery store, and I was saving up to take some night classes. I wanted to get into bookkeeping or something steady, something with benefits. But then I met Chris." Marcus noticed the way her voice softened when she said his name, tinged with both affection and resentment. "He was charming, you know, said all the right things. And I believed him. I thought we were building something real." Her voice cracked, and she looked away. "But when I told him I was pregnant, everything changed. He started coming home late, spending money we didn't have. And then one day he just didn't come home at all." Marcus clenched his jaw but stayed quiet, letting her keep control of the story. "I tried to keep working, but it got harder once I started showing. Customers stared, and my boss kept asking how long I'd be able to keep up. By the time I had Noah, they'd already given my shifts away to someone else. No maternity leave, no paycheck, nothing." Emily's grip on Noah tightened. "I thought I could handle it. I really did. I sold what I could: furniture, clothes, anything. But it wasn't enough. Rent came due, and then the eviction notice. After that, it was just me, Noah, and the car." The tears finally fell, and Sarah didn't bother wiping them away. Marcus leaned back, running a hand over his head as he absorbed everything she'd said. He had seen poverty before. He had known people who'd struggled. But hearing Sarah's story made it personal. She wasn't some distant stranger. She was a mother who had done everything she could and still lost. How long have you been living in the car? He asked gently. 2 weeks, Sarah said. It's not so bad during the day, but at night, she trailed off, her voice trembling again. I try to keep the engine running, but sometimes I can't afford the gas. Noah gets so cold. And her voice broke, and Marcus felt his chest tighten. You're not going back to that car, he said firmly. Sarah looked up, her expression a mix of gratitude and fear. But what happens after tonight? What if this is just another temporary fix? I can't keep living like this. Noah can't. You won't, Marcus said. I promise you. This is just the start. We'll figure it out together. Sarah looked at him for a long moment, searching his face for any sign that he might be lying or offering false hope. But all she saw was sincerity. I want to believe that, she whispered. You don't have to believe it yet, Marcus replied. Just let me prove it to you. Sarah nodded, and Marcus felt a flicker of relief. But he knew this was far from over. She needed more than one night in a warm room. She needed stability, security, and a way to rebuild her life. I'm going to make some calls, Marcus said, standing up. We'll get you some help, real help. But for now, just rest. Take care of that little guy. Sarah's eyes followed him as he moved toward the door. Marcus, she said softly. He turned back. Yeah. Why are you doing this? Marcus paused, his hand resting on the doorframe. Because no one should have to go through this alone, he said. And because I can. Sarah's eyes filled with tears again. But this time they weren't just tears of sadness. They were tears of relief. As Marcus stepped out into the cool night air, he pulled out his phone and started dialing. He had made a promise, and he wasn't about to break it. Sarah and Noah deserved more than survival. They deserved a chance to thrive, and he was going to make sure they got it.